It's a Monday morning, down in the smoke today with, and most of you will recognise the gentleman, Mr. Matt Alder. Matt has kindly agreed to do a whole series of monthly or bi-monthly, whatever Matt and I feel about doing, kind of interviews under the heading of Meta Matters. A pun, I know, but since Matt is building out a great business with the MetaShift name, I kind of thought I'd try to give him a bit of branding platform.
Thanks.
So, Matt, what's going on in the world of Matt Alder?
Well, thanks, Keith. To mention the e-marketeers thing to start with, I'm teaming up with, they're a quite well-known training provider, and I'm teaming up with them to provide digital recruiting and social recruiting courses. There are social recruiting courses in July and September, and the real point of doing this is there are obviously a lot of events and conferences and things around about digital and social in the recruitment space at the moment, and I'm not really sort of trying to sort of compete with those in any way, and obviously I'm a part of lots of those events, and I'll continue to be so. But really I'm sensing a lot of feedback that people would like perhaps a more formal kind of structured way of finding out about what's going on and what people are doing in this space. So I'm basically providing these as kind of a more formal structured training course that people can come on and learn about the things that are going to really affect them over the coming years and months as social moves more and more into the recruitment space, and also look at what companies are already using it successfully and what they're doing.
So I'm going to endorse that. I equally agree that I love all the events that are going on, but sometimes it does feel a little bit like the industry talking to the industry, and it can be a bit like a little echo chamber. And being a bit of an old thickie, sometimes I sit in these rooms terrified to ask any kind of question, because actually I think I don't know. What's funny is when you sit with people privately, one, a lot of real in-house recruiters know way more than they ever let on, and if they don't know way more, they want to learn in what I would call a more formal tutorial environment. So I think, Matt, these are going to be really successful. If you want to go to the Buzz, Recruitment Media Monday or Job Site Advisor, we'll be carrying dates of all of those events. A couple of minutes ago, Matt and I were talking about topics for today, and he mentioned a word for me, and I've always gone for big buzzwords: talent pipelines, talent pools, Mr. Adam Whitford's talent puddle. Matt came up with something that completely threw me. I had no idea what he was talking about. Talent communities. Matt, what is a talent community? Help an old man, please.
That's a very good question. There's actually lots of talk about talent communities at the moment. I think it's interesting because looking at the social communication revolution that's going on and how that's appropriate for recruitment, there's always been sort of two real areas that fascinate me. First of all is how platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter to a certain extent can really kind of power referral programs and make referral programs much more wide-reaching and really significant. But that's probably an interview for another day. But the other thing is communities. And the thing about the tools that are available at the moment is they're allowing people to organise themselves around interest communities, professional communities, all these kind of things. The kind of things that humans have always done, but the social web is making that much more widespread. Now, there's quite a lot of talk about how this works for recruitment, and I think that the idea of a talent community is a really interesting one, because I don't think there's a straight answer that says this is a talent community. I actually think that it's all about using the concept of people organising themselves into communities and tapping into that for recruitment. So if you look at what people are doing, you have companies who are tapping a recruitment message or a brand message into an existing community, and you also have companies who are building their own communities to really recruit. But the advantages of doing it essentially is allowing companies to create very sort of long pipelines of people who could be candidates, and making their recruitment much more planned and much more proactive. And the key to it is actually having a strong brand within that. So to explain, I'll talk a little bit about a bit of work that I'm doing with one of my clients at the moment, which is they're very keen to identify pools of talent on the on various parts of the internet. So there's a massive kind of research bit in terms of finding where those people are. As we're finding them, the way that we're communicating is we're really looking at how we can communicate the brand of the company and why people might want to work there, not just now, but in 6 months' time, in 12 months' time, even in 2 years' time. And the key to success with it is really being able to kind of communicate that in a way that doesn't disrupt but complements the community. So it's an example of an employer who is really sort of looking at their potential recruitment activity 1 to 2 years out, and is thinking about how they can connect with interesting groups on the web to really kind of get their brand across. So I think that's a really good example of building interest within communities and really tapping into the way that the web can bring like-minded people together. The other thing that I've seen people do is actually create their own communities. Now, I think this is much more difficult to do because you don't. There's a school of thought that says you can't create a community; you can only discover a community or facilitate a community. So I think for most employers and most brands, it's all about looking and seeing where their target audience is and how they're communicating with each other. But in certain cases, people can really sort of take the first move and be the first people to sort of create and facilitate a community. And the companies, again, that are doing this successfully, it's very much about how they're letting that community talk to each other rather than how they're broadcasting that community. So talent communities, that was a very, very long, rambling answer. It's a very, very complicated concept. I'm really interested to see what companies are doing with it. And what their success will be. I think we'll see many more case studies in the next 6 to 12 months, particularly the project I'm working on at the moment. I'm hoping that's going to be a successful case study. But really, it's tapping into the way that the social web is creating conversations. And I think companies should be aware of those conversations and aware of how they might be able to promote their brand in an appropriate way in those forums and as part of those conversations.
I find that fascinating. Many years ago, probably 1989, I was in Paris on business and I saw a magazine called Le Figaro Jeune for the les enfants, the children. But it was actually a recruitment magazine published once a year by Le Figaro for 12 to 15-year-olds. And I thought, a recruitment magazine for 12 to 15-year-olds. Transpires it was sponsored by Renault, who had actually put 50,000 francs in those days into a magazine because they wanted to start to influence 12 to 15-year-olds. One, to go into engineering per se. Secondly, the fact that Renault was a great employer. But thirdly, of course, covertly, they were also developing a brand platform. And I found it fascinating. I was blown away by it. And I sense that's kind of where this may end up, is you may start to position yourselves amongst social groups of, say, 15-year-olds who are doing funky things around engineering and position your brand inside those kind of communities.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good example because we're talking about something that's always happened. I mean, I think as far back as I can remember, companies have been doing that kind of thing and sponsoring that, doing those sort of activities. And I think that now there's a real opportunity for it to be much easier for people to do that. And much easier to kind of connect and facilitate these groups. I think there's a really important point within it though, which is in-house recruiters and companies who are recruiting direct have a real advantage here over third parties because they can really talk about their company and really talk about their brand.